Mr. Kumar, please explain to me and also to the participants in a very simple way, so the participants can maybe understand, or they are not really for the time being maybe starting to know or starting to learn or starting to practice about the talent analytics that we can use to design workforce planning strategy based on your presentation. That's my first question. While waiting for the questions from the participants, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir. Your question is more about how you use talent analytics for workforce. I'll go back to some of the points I mentioned earlier. I know that some of the topics that I mentioned and spoken about is probably going about some people who are not traditionally doing HR analytics per se. But my journey was also trying to make you educate you on why people in HR should be equally comfortable with data. If you look at any kind of analytics that's getting generated, what I see huge value is in the fact that you should and build data using disjoint data. What do I mean by that? I mean that you take HR data, you look at finance data, you look at sales data, and you build a story which is together, right? Now, unless and until you don't understand sales cycle, you're not able to plan your workforce. Unless and until you understand who's paying what skill in finance. Right? Every skill today has got a value. Some skills are at about $1,000 a day, some skills are $100 a day. Unless you understand that in finance, you do not know where to plan. So if you go to workforce analytics, you would need to know data which is beyond typical HR. And you should be comfortable in building that. Only then you're able to kind of make sense of it and bring value to business. Otherwise, you're going to be like a frog in the well, only talking about HR data which is of no consequence to business. Ultimately, what is business interested? They are interested in knowing how to get the right skill at the least cost, in the right place, at the right time. For all of this, your understanding of business is important, which is understood for any given company. But your understanding of now, like I mentioned, sales, finance, training data, which you probably may or may not be interested in, is something that goes a long way. So I don't know if that answers your question, Sakam.
Yes, yes, you are answering my question. Thank you very much. There is a question from the floor, Mr. Kumar. Median alias Samsyah. Mr. Renil, thank you for your presentation. Nice to meet you. Can we get an idea of an example of the visualization of talent analytics and the human resource information system? For example, we want to analyze worker resilience and analyze worker resilience motivation. How we can put it into the system? What factors should be the data for the analysis material? What are the important things that we should analyze in talent analysis, quote unquote? Okay, please, Mr. Renil.
Thank you for your question, that's a very comprehensive question. Let me see how I can do this. You're right. It's just not about the data. How are you able to paint the picture in a simple way that either business or teams of the grounds understand goes a long way, right? End of the day, I also talk about another area of data adoption at scale, which means you can have a fantastic tool in a product, but if it's not getting pulled by the people on the ground, it's of no consequence. So building systems, building logics, building the right kind of visualization, which also happening because of tech, goes a long way in data democratization. So let me see if I can pull out another talking about resilience, I'm just trying to see if I can just put out something to show you. Just give me a second. I'll just give you a quick view of resilience of a given team, which I had first-hand experience around. Okay, all of you know and have people with disabilities in your teams. In fact, all of us are trying to hire more people because we need a fair share of people with disabilities in our teams, like it's what in society is. And here is a use case I would like to kind of show it to you. Make it just shows you very in a very simple way. We also have many people, you know, as UN defines, there are more than 21 different people with disabilities. Here in this graph, I was trying to understand how to make them a lot more assimilated with the company. What you see is that people in green are people who are hearing impaired. People in yellow are people who are visually impaired. Now, I once got senior leadership to meet about 5-10 people, and I saw the complete team the leadership team was very awkward. They did not know whether to sympathize, not to sympathize. And the team did not know how to react to the team, with the leaders. So what we did was, we did a process called reverse mentoring. So what we did was, we anchored two different disabilities, one on visual and second on hearing, with the leadership team. We sent two people directly with the leadership of the company. And they now had to get them to work with them. For example, if the presentation, the person who cannot see, you would include her or him. How can you do it? The leader has to be sensitive. If somebody can't hear, and if you're talking in a meeting like this, how do you make sure the person is understood or she's understanding this? Now, long story short, talking about resilience, talking about how to depict data, right? What you see is, on one side, before we did the reverse mentoring, we see that there was no connection between any of the people with disability with leadership or even this middle level leadership. They mostly have fantastic relationship only with their own team members or with people with disability, you know, people who cannot hear be all together, who cannot see people together, but they all find comfort in that. How do you break that and make it a lot more equitable? And this is what happened. After reverse mentoring, this is what happened on the right side, right? You ended up seeing that people now have relationship at all levels of the organization. They have connections not only in this organization, but also in other organizations. So in many ways, we as HR folks, if we apply the right tools, can build the right level of resilience in team, but also more importantly, can now depict and show the business the value that we bring in, which encourages most things to happen. I don't know if that answers your question, Median. Otherwise, please do type in.
Yes, I think it's really the answer for that particular question. Okay, while waiting for another question again, okay, I have to raise, question also, a question, because it has to be fulfilled. I mean, the Q&A session to be optimally done effectively. You mentioned about things that O&A is now really very important. Okay, now how could you use this kind of, what I say, maybe what I call, maybe I'm not really very sure whether I'm right or wrong, is a tool. Okay, now how do we optimize this particular tool to use it which we can use it for analytical talent, to retain the high performance talents in every companies, because high performance talents it's really very crucial for the competitiveness, for the future, and for the performance of the companies, which to be more and more competitive in the FUCA area for the time being and for the future. Please, thank you.
Saka, that's a good question, right? And there is one use case around attrition management using network science, and that's exactly what you're asking, right?
Yes.
Now, before I answer the question, I think if anybody wants to do it, they need help because the science is rather new and it needs a lot of technology behind this. Right? So it's not somebody can just not start on his or her own. They need some bit of help, at least as we speak right now. But I'll give you one specific use case, which I was working on in one of my earlier experiences. I was looking at Teams data, I was looking at email data, and I was trying to understand which employee is engaged with the company in what level. Highly engaged, disengaged, up to all the way to completely disengaged. And you can easily do it. Because if you have the right level of normalization of data, you need normalized data. For example, I'll tell you, in companies, large companies, most managers or senior level managers are working mostly through meetings. They're not doing as much emails or not doing chat. Right? But as you go down in the hierarchy of a team, of a company, they are very comfortable chatting or more comfortable with emails. Once you normalize the data, which takes a lot of effort, you need somebody who's done this for long, right? You're now very clearly able to pinpoint to say who's the person engaged, disengaged. And what we do at that stage is we start marrying performance data. We start marrying for example, data, or we marry anything that's important for us. And we now are able to understand in the leadership who is the top performer, who's engaged or disengaged. I've gone to a stage where we said that we can actually predict, but today I don't say predict because predict means I take a lot more on my shoulder. I say this is an aid to the HR people or managers.
Yeah.
People who are outliers, which means if most of the data is in the middle, but there are a couple of, let's say 10% outliers on both sides. Those are the first ones to focus on. If you have an outlier of somebody who's a high performance person, you are very clearly able to understand. Once you understand it, next step happens again. Engaging, hyper-personalizing, basically you start tracking down what happens to individual, right? So I will say to HR person, I think here are 10,000 people, but I think these are the 5 people who are top performers you need to speak to because they are disengaged. I see that from data. I don't need to come into your teams. I'm sitting at an apex level and I'm able to tell you right here. Right? And we've seen many instances where the data is almost 10% right because we're looking at data on millions of data points. We're not looking at only one data point over a given day or a week. Right? We're looking at it over time. We see that against the normal average, somebody is really off, and therefore there's a story that's somewhere behind. So invariably, HR person goes there, speaks to a person, and realizes there is an issue, and we go about correcting it. So it's important to have data, but on the other side, it's also important to do the normal HR, which is basically talking to people. And once you do the two and marry the two, your efficacy of how much time spent an employee becomes a lot better, and you're able to retain people in the organization.